Welcome back into the channel, everybody. Today it's Reid, and I know it's been a little while, but I'm finally coming back at you with another tips and tricks video. It's been a while since I've brought you a video in general, and I apologize for that. I was very busy this last weekend. Got out, went golfing a couple times, got rained on the one time while I tried to go golfing. A friend's birthday, so we went to the zoo, we went to actually traveled to another zoo in another state as well. So pretty busy weekend, lots of fun stuff, but figured it's time to get back in and get you guys a video. And today we're going to talk about scouting tips here in MLB The Show 19. So it's not going to be a terribly long video, but before I get into it, I do want to say that with the 4th of July weekend coming up here, I don't know if any of my viewers aren't from the United States, but I'll be busy this weekend as well. I don't know when I'll be able to upload videos, but I'm going to try and upload as long as I can. I'm going to at least try and get you guys, because today's Monday that I'm making this video, I'm going to try and get you Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday videos, and then Thursday obviously is 4th of July. Friday I'm going to be probably doing something, probably golfing, and then Saturday and Sunday are up in the air as of now, but no guarantees on videos. But being that I'll be off, I'm hoping that I'll be able to fit in videos prior to doing anything, but regardless, I just want to keep you guys updated on that, and we'll hop into the scouting thing here in a moment. First thing I want to talk to you about in terms of scouting, before we talk about anything, is I want to talk to you guys about the timetable for scouting. And so essentially what I want to show you guys is that the draft day, so this is 67 days, and we're in March. So if you go ahead and count forward essentially 2 months, the MLB draft is somewhere around, what would it be, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it's somewhere around May, if I believe I'm correct, like May 5th. That'd be 67 days. So if we go, 27 to 27, and then 27 again, and then 7 days from that, so 3, wait, how am I'm definitely counting this wrong, so it would be all of April, it would be 30, all of May, so it'd be June, sorry, I'm incorrect, so it's like June 5th or something like that, right here at the beginning of June, would be draft day. And so what I want to show you guys is that if you draft players, I apologize for just kind of stumbling through this, but if you draft players here in a certain year, I'm in 2020 for example, but let's go back a year and say I drafted my players in 2019 during this draft day. I want you guys to keep in mind that you're not going to have access to those players until the next season, but what you will want to do is you want to sign them to their base rookie contracts, which aren't very expensive, and I'll show you guys real quick. My first round draft pick was a third baseman by the name of Joe Ashburn, a really good player, lots of potential, but his contract was only $80K, so make sure you sign all of those rookies to their contracts. Even if you need to release them or something, it's not a significant amount of money, so I don't see any reason why you wouldn't sign them to their rookie contracts after you draft them. However, these players won't show up until the following season. So as you can see, I drafted Joe Ashburn in 2019, and he didn't show up for me until 2020. And so that's very important to note. You kind of don't want to forget about that, because what you end up have happening is something like I have happening, where I have log jams at a lot of positions. I planned for Joe Ashburn to kind of take over at an infield spot, but I don't have a spot for him to take over at now because I kind of stacked up at other positions. So you don't want to have that happen to you. Just keep in mind that, you are drafting these players, and if they're good, they're going to be what they say they are once you draft them, and you'll be able to get them next year and use them. So Joe Ashburn, for example, I drafted him. He's only 19 years old. We have lots of control over him. He's a 71 with high B potential, and as you can see, he could be an MLB player right now in terms of his batting ability. Now, his defensive ability could use some work, and so that's why I'm starting him in AAA, but I just wanted to let you guys know that you can find really good guys here scouting-wise, and you don't even necessarily have to do all the scouting yourself. Now, I also found this guy, Matt Elise. He was my second-round pick, 70 overall with A potential, and I found multiple other guys that are pretty good, but I just want to show you guys that it's real easy to find lots of good prospects here through the scouting system, and you don't necessarily even have to do the scouting yourself. You can let it go on auto. I do recommend a little bit of personal interaction with it, and I'll show you what I mean with that in a minute, but for the most part, you can do this all on your own. You can draft pretty good players, and then if you look, I drafted some other good players like Sandy Gaston, 66 with B potential, and then there were a couple other guys, I believe, not Oviedo, this guy, Xavier Driscoll, we drafted with B potential. We got lots of good prospects through the draft. And what I did, and I'll detail that for you now, is for the majority of the season, I have scouting set to auto. And what that does is it will automatically go through and have these guys, discover prospects and whatnot. And that's all fine and good, and they'll scout prospects and whatnot. But what they fail to do most of the time is they fail to scout these guys out the whole way. So as you can see, I have these guys scouted out the whole way. And we know that they're going to be good or they're not going to be good. And as you can see, a guy like Marcos Cabrera, we know he's going to be good because he's got 80 overall potential, max potential. So he'll have very good potential, and he's a 65 overall base. So you know that he's going to be a good player, and that's kind of what you want. So you need to strike a balance between discovering players and figuring out which players are good or not. And then a guy like Eddie Soriano is a very good example where he's supposed to be a really good player. I mean, he's probably one of the best players in this draft by the looks of what he has here, 80 potential and a 75 overall. However, what you want to note is that we only have him scouted about halfway, a little under halfway. So what you're going to want to do, this is my first tip, is once you approach the draft day, at least a couple weeks before you approach the draft day, is find guys like this that have high potential and potentially a high overall, and make sure that you assign a specific scout to them. So the way you do that is I would go over and hover over whichever scout I want to assign to that player. And this depends on what type of position they are. So this is where these scout stats will come into effect. They will scout them particularly better if you use the correct type of person. So Eddie Soriano is a position player, so we want to pick a scout that is particularly good at scouting position players. And so I wouldn't want to assign George Traxler to scout him because he's not good at position players. I would want to assign somebody like Andrew Hardwick because he's really good at position players, or maybe Ken Daly because he's specifically good at position players. So I'm going to go ahead and scroll over Andrew Hardwick, and then all you have to do is scroll over to the player and you press square, and that will assign the player, and then you can override it here, and then it'll become highlighted blue there. You can see, and then you know that your guy is going to actually be scouting that player, and that's pretty important. You want to give yourself a couple weeks of that, because for the most part, when you set this on auto scout, they're going to just discover a ton of prospects, and that's what you'll see here. I have a huge list of discovered prospects. But does that really matter if I don't know if any of them are good or not? Not really. You want to know at least some of the players, whether they're good or not, and that's really important. So I highly recommend that you guys go through and select at least, when you start to approach draft day, select these players and figure out if they're good or not. And then the other things that I kind of want to talk about is just detailing what everything on this screen means. And exactly what I look at in terms of figuring out whether a player is good or not. Now, we'll just start, instead of starting on the scouts, we'll start on the actual players list and show you guys what I'm weighing in terms of players. And obviously, you're going to want to learn, position-wise, what specifically you need as a team or what you project to need in the future. But I don't let that play into this a whole lot. I just try and draft the best available player because, if you do a good job with, the players that you already have on your team and do a good job in free agency and everything like that, you're not necessarily going to need these prospects. And so you're just going to be looking to fill out your minor league rosters and bring in guys that can compete with your other players. And so don't specifically let a position influence you. Just pick the best player available. And then you want to kind of look at the combination of a player's age, their MLB ETA, which is their estimated time of arrival, which means that this is when they're expected to become an MLB starter or an MLB player, and then you want to look at their potential and overall. Now, you can scroll over and look at their other numbers, and if you're specifically looking for some type of player, like say you really want in your organization some power bats, and you don't have that, and you really just need some people that have power, you can sort by that. And you can go over to this column and look through and see who has a power bat. Okay, so maybe if I want to draft for power, I want to draft Bryant Latham here. No matter what his actual overall and everything is, because I just want that power, and that's what my organization needs they don't have, or that's what I'm going to want in the future. So you can look at those things, but primarily what I look is the combination of potential, overall, MLB ETA, and then age. And generally speaking, what I'm looking for is I sort by MLB ETA, and then I look and see, okay, so who's got the best combination of potential and overall? And that means I want guys that have 80 potential, and then I want the highest possible overall. And so what I'm looking for is, generally speaking, I'm looking for a combination of 80 and 75 here. And those are the players that I want to scout first. And then next would be an 80 and 70, like these two guys here, and then 80s and 65s. And that's generally going to tell you, this player is, if they have a higher overall, that's going to correlate with their MLB ETA usually. So what you'll see is that a lot of these, 2021 players, or if you are in your 2019 franchise, the 2020 players are going to be like 65 or 70 overall, because they'll be just on the cusp of being MLB players, and you could potentially call them up and actually have them do something very early on. And then the other thing you want to weigh is the difference in age. So while you might have two players here that are very similar, both 80 and 70, and that you might scout them and they might turn out to be pretty much exactly that, there's a difference in age, and they're both starting pitchers. And this is literally a perfect example, because you have a guy that's 22 versus a guy that's 21. In general, it just behooves you to draft the guy that is 1 year younger, because then you get more out of them and you have a longer potential career. It just makes more sense to draft the younger player. But then there are also guys that are much younger that could potentially be just as good, and guys that are, once you scout them, you might figure out are just as good. You're better off drafting a 19-year-old player than you are a 22-year-old player. And so you have to weigh the combinations of things there. It's going to depend on what you want specifically, and in terms of what your team might need. But generally speaking, I'm looking to draft the youngest players that have 80 potential, and then I don't care too much on their overall, because honestly I wouldn't mind if their overalls are currently lower. I just want the best potential, and the overall is a bonus that helps me determine between two players who is better. So like if I were drafting between Valenzuela here and Calderon, I would say, okay, they both have 75 potential, but this guy's a 70 and this guy's a 65. I would tend to draft the 70 overall player, just because he has, a higher chance of being a good player already. And I would just do that because of the fact that he has the better stat, even though they're basically carbon copy in terms of age and ETA and potential and everything like that. So that's my determining factor. But primarily speaking, the number one thing you want to look at is the potential of the player and the MLB ETA. And you can also sort here by potential. So you'll see potential here, and then you'll be able to see the difference in MLB ETA. So if I were drafting these two players up here at the top, this is a good example of the correlation between overall and MLB ETA. You can see the guy that's a 65 overall is going to reach the MLB sooner than the guy that is a 55 overall. However, all things being held the same, their potential is the same. This guy is younger than this guy. Some things you want to weigh, but generally speaking, I would probably draft this guy that's 22 years old, because a guy that's a 65 overall with high potential is, in my opinion, more likely to turn out to be good than a guy that's a 55 overall with high potential. And the reason being for that is, if you know that the player is a 65, or that they're a higher overall, they're more likely to be in a higher level in your system, and there's less chance for error. If you're starting a guy out in AA, then they could have a couple bad seasons in a row or something, and their potential could go down and not be good. But this guy, that's a 65 overall, he's, ETA 1-2 seasons. There's less room for him to, fluctuate in terms of his rating. It's more likely that he turns out to be something good. So that's what I'm looking for in terms of those things. What I do want to show you guys is the blue chip. If you see the position column on the left side, it says closing pitcher, third base, second base, so on and so forth for all the players. There are blue chips right there. They're blue markers beside certain players. Those are players that are generally known to be top-end prospects, and that's all that means to you guys. If you have a chance to draft a blue chip player, go for it, because it's somebody that we know is going to be a good player. And I don't know if that's through scouting or if it's just like that because some of those are already designated. I don't really know, but for the most part, I know that if you draft a blue chip player, they're going to be a good player. So don't hesitate to draft those guys. Those guys are probably better off to be drafted than other positions. And then you'll see that there is one other designation here, and this like orangish one here, and these ones are interesting. These are like newly scouted players, and I haven't found out what that actually necessarily means for you. Essentially what it means is these are players that your scouts just discovered, but I've read online some talk that says, if you don't scout these guys within a certain amount of time, then you lose them from your draft board. So I don't know if that's accurate or not, but keep that in mind that you might want to focus on scouting these newly discovered players specifically. I don't know if that really even matters, but primarily what I do is I let my guys auto-discover players, and then whenever I feel like it, I go in here and I search around and I say, okay, these are the guys with high potential. I want you to scout these ones out specifically, like Eddie Soriano, and figure out if they're good or not. And then by the time draft day rolls around, you'll have a pretty good idea of some players to draft, high potential guys, and you'll end up with a pretty good draft board like that. And that's pretty much all you need to know about scouting here at MLB The Show 19. It's pretty simple, pretty easy. You don't have to do it all yourself. You can let these guys do it themselves. But I guess I should talk one more thing about your scouts if you're specifically assigning them. And you can assign to scout anything in particular. You can scout any different position that you want, and then you can select that position by a certain type. So say you want a left-handed pitcher, or you want to get some left-handed pitchers into your organization, you can tell your scout to specifically scout left-handed pitchers, with a focus on command, or you want somebody that has good ball movement, or somebody that has good velocity, whatever it is that you're looking for in your organization. And then you have a choice between Central, East, West, and International. So you have 4 different regions you can scout from. And you can do that for every single position. You can scout catchers, infield, outfield, whatever. You can search by contact, power, fielding, arm strength, any of these things that you might want specifically. So for me, for example, I like to find guys that have speed in the outfield. That's what I'm all about. I love having speed in the outfield, and in general I like having speed at other positions. So you can scout for fast infielders, or say, generally speaking, you're not going to have a fast catcher. They're very rare, but maybe I specifically am looking for something like that. I can scout for a fast catcher and try and find one that's good. Generally, I don't think it's a good idea to waste your time, trying to focus down one specific type of player like that. Just let your scouts find as many players as possible, and then you do your best to scout these guys in here once you figure out if you think they have good potential or not, because what that's going to set you up to do is at least have a good draft. I find that if you focus down too much on like one specific position like that, you're gonna hurt yourself, and you might only end up with like one good prospect in the entire draft. But don't get me wrong, maybe that's something you want to do. Maybe you just specifically only really need and want a fast catcher. Then by all means have at it. Put all 4 of your scouts into that, finding a fast catcher from any different region that they can, and then you'll get that one prospect that you really want and need for your organization, and then maybe that'll be what makes you happy. But the nice thing about this is that you can do it in any way that you choose. You can scout any position that you want, any type of player, left-handed, right-handed, specific skill, and that's what's great about MLB scouting system. And it's very clear here on the right side, whether they're going to be good or not. Once you scout them, it's very clear, this guy is going to have the max potential, which is 80, and it shows you down at the bottom what the scouting scale is. So it's very clear on everything. If they have 80 potential, that they're an elite talent. If they have 70 to 75, that they're well above average. If they're 60 to 65, they're an above average player. Average is 50 to 55, and so you can kind of work that out in your mind as whether that's A potential, B potential, or what. But 80 potential is high 80s to A, high B to A potential. 70 to 75 is going to be B potential no matter what. Above average is going to be high C potential to B potential. Average is going to be C potential. And so you can kind of work that out nice and easy in your mind. and figure out what players are good for you. So hopefully this helped you guys out, give you some information on the scouting system in terms of what I do. Generally speaking, what I do is I just let my guys go for a couple days, scout out a whole bunch of people, and then like right now, where I'm at in the franchise, I've gone up to a couple games, so I've let them scout out for a couple days. Now what I'll do after a couple days, after a couple games, maybe the easiest way for you guys to think about this is to just do it after every series. Once I'm done playing the Reds, maybe it's a good idea for me to go in and check out my scouting and make sure that we scout out some of the guys that our guys found, because as you can see, when we came in here, all 4 of these scouts were currently on discovery duty, and they weren't currently looking to scout out specific players. So maybe it's a good idea after every series at least, or at least a couple weeks before the draft, go in here and select specific players to scout. They'll highlight them blue, and then you'll be able to find out whether they're truly good or not. And then you'll have a good time in the draft because you'll find good prospects to fill out your farm system, and your team's going to get a whole lot better for it. So hopefully this helped you guys out. Hopefully this gave you some useful information for MLB The Show 19. Hopefully it gave you some useful information for the scouting system. If it did, leave a like down below. As always, subscribe to the channel and comment any feedback that you have. Anything you guys want to see, as always, let me know and I'll get it for you. I'll see you guys in the next episode. I hope you guys have a great one. Hope you guys have a great holiday as well. And hopefully I'm consistent with some videos here upcoming. But we'll see. I'll be busy. So either way, I'll see you guys in the next video.